When you're designing a gamified training program, one of the first decisions you'll have to make is whether to go with a systemic approach or an exotic one. Even if you don't know you're making this decision, you're making this decision, or rather, your content is. What's the difference between systemic and exotic design? Let's look at the systemic approach first. This is a type of design you can use when most or all of your content follows some logic or some repeating pattern. For example, say you're teaching customer service in a restaurant and your service follows the same series of steps over and over again. Customer comes in, you bring water and a menu, you take the order, you bring the order, check in to make sure everything's okay, and then you bring them the bill. Let's say that's your system. You can build a simple simulation of that, like a diner dash type game, and have the learner go through the steps over and over again with different customers. The happier the customer, the more points they get. That repetition constitutes practice, and over time they'll get better at it. The learner will naturally come up with efficiencies. For example, they'll stand next to the food station when it's time to serve so they don't waste time walking over when it's ready. That sort of thing. That's what practice does, and that's great. But for the learner, once they've found those efficiencies, that repetition gets old real fast. So you want to put them through cycles of practice, but you need to find ways of varying things somewhat from one cycle to the next so that the learner stays engaged and challenged. So I'm going to show you three and a half ways you can reuse the same system to foster practice while keeping things fresh and interesting for the learner. Obviously, the first thing you can vary from one repetition to the next is your content itself. You can see the system as a series of placeholders for your content. In this restaurant example, the steps are the same, but the content in some steps changes. For example, at this step, the customer can order different things. So we're repeating the cycle, but differently. So in my first level, they serve pasta. And the player learns that at this step, they have to bring Parmesan and fresh pepper. In another level, the customer will order meat. So here I learned that I have to bring a steak knife. And if it's fries, then I bring ketchup. So you build one system and you can cover all of your content, all the different types of meals using that one system. The second thing you'll often vary with systemic gameplay, especially in a training game, is the steps themselves. So yes, it's one system, but you'll probably introduce that complexity gradually. So maybe my first levels will include fewer steps, like here I'm just giving the customer a main meal and then a bill. But once the learners mastered this, I can add more, like an appetizer step or a dessert step. So I'm gradually scaffolding more and more complexity into the task, giving the learner the opportunity to practice and master each step along the way. Another way you can vary using the steps is to combine elements. So you can do steak and fries. So now they have to remember the steak knife and the ketchup. So now by combining the steps and varying the content of the steps, I'm starting to get a pretty good variety of combos, so my practice cycles won't feel so repetitive. But again, the learner is eventually going to habituate to this too. So the third thing you can vary is the level's goal. So say I've got 3 levels with the exact same content and the exact same complexity, the same steps, but now I'm going to change the goal of each one. So in the first one, you need to finish the level in under 2 minutes, so you have to be speedy. In this one, you need a high customer satisfaction score. And in this one, you need perfect accuracy, no doing things out of order. So this uses the same level, but it forces the learner to focus on different aspects of your service. And then of course I can combine all these goals into one mega level if I want to. The last way I'm going to give you isn't really related to gameplay, which is why I said I'd give you 3.5 ways of varying your practice cycles. After a certain number of levels, you can change the setting or the presentation. So here, after succeeding through 10 levels, i.e. 10 cycles of practice, I can give my restaurant a Mexican theme now. This novelty will give the learner a little hit of dopamine. But of course, if you're only varying the presentation from one level to the next, you can't count on that being enough to sustain the learner through endless cycles, but it is a nice bonus to give them. The systemic approach has some great advantages, the first one being, of course, reusability. It can be less time-consuming from a production standpoint to use this approach. Your main challenge is to devise one game system that'll work for all or most of your content, but once that's built, you plan out your levels to cover all the complexity, all of your content, and then you tweak their difficulty for a nice, smooth progression, ideally with playtesting. From the learner's standpoint, the advantage of a systemic approach is that they don't need to relearn different game mechanics from one level to the next. That means that once they've understood the rules of the game, most of their cognitive load, most of their attention will be focused on learning your content. They'll concentrate on the novelty, and that novelty at each level will either be your content or some other measure of success like speed or customer happiness. Everything else stays the same from one level to the next. So, to sum up, Designing a game as a system allows you to put the player through cycles of repetition and practice, and it lets them concentrate on your content rather than on the game rules that change all the time. And to keep the cycles fresh, you can vary the content, the complexity, and the goal of each level. You can do that when your course content follows a repeating pattern, but what if it doesn't? What if your course is made up of vastly different skills and concepts? In that case, it might not be possible to come up with one system that'll really apply to it all. If you do, that system might be so disconnected from some of the content that you'll have to twist that content to fit it in, and so a lot will get lost in translation. In that case, you can't really come up with one system to rule them all, and so that's when you have to use exotic gameplay, where the gameplay is going to be different from one part of the content to the other in order to teach each one well. And that's a whole nother set of best practices, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next video. So until then, thank you very much for watching, happy designing, and I'll see you next time.